Hey guys, in today's video, I share an impressive story. Meet Solomon Wilder, a simple man who, after a near-death experience, claims to have seen priests burning in hell and discovered a devastating truth about heaven and hell. This revelation will challenge everything you believe about the fate of souls. So, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any details of this incredible story. Get ready for a chilling story. I always believed I had an ordinary life, the kind you'd find in any small town in Arkansas. My name is Solomon Wilder. I was born and raised in Bentonville, where the sky seems to touch the earth and mornings begin with birdsong echoing across the farm fields. I come from a family that has always valued hard work and faith, values that I carry with me to this day, even though my perspective on them has changed drastically following the events I'm about to share. I grew up among plantations and barns, learning from an early age the value of waking up before the sun and sleeping with a clear conscience of a day well spent. My parents taught me that honesty and dedication were the pillars of a dignified life, and it was with these principles that I built my own story. I met Martha in high school. She was that girl with the shy smile who sat in the front row of church on Sundays. Our love grew naturally, like the plantations that surrounded our homes. We got married young, full of dreams and expectations. Martha had that sweet way of seeing the world, always finding beauty in the simplest things. Together, we built our little farm, a piece of land that, for us, was heaven on earth. Soon our sons, Caleb and Noah, came along, bringing even more joy into our lives. Seeing those boys growing up, running through the fields, learning to ride horses and helping with farm chores, these were moments that I treasured. Our routine was simple, but rich in meaningful moments. We woke up early to take care of the animals, work the land, and make sure everything was in order. Evenings were filled with conversations on the porch, watching the sunset paint the Arkansas sky with colors that seemed straight out of a painting. Martha always said that God had a special talent for coloring the southern sky. We were a traditional family, attending the local church every Sunday, participating in community events, and helping our neighbors whenever possible. We lived the kind of life that many would consider monotonous, but for us it was perfect in its simplicity. I never imagined that all of this would change so drastically, that my understanding of life, death, and God himself would be completely transformed by an experience that would push the limits of what I believed possible. That Easter Sunday began like so many others in our family, with the aroma of fresh coffee mixing with the smell of homemade bread that Martha always baked for special occasions. We had planned to visit our relatives in the south of the state, something we traditionally did during the holidays. The day was particularly beautiful, with a blue sky that seemed more alive than ever. I remember every detail of that morning as if it were yesterday. Martha looked especially beautiful in her flowery dress, the one I gave her for her last birthday. Caleb and Noah were running around the house, excited at the prospect of seeing their cousins. We prepared a basket of goodies for the trip: homemade cookies, sandwiches, and that chocolate cake that was Martha's specialty. The trip to my parents' house was full of joy. The kids sang in the back seat. Martha held my hand as we drove, and we talked about our plans for the future. We talked about expanding the farm, about what it would be like to see the children grow up, about the dreams we still wanted to achieve together. If I had known that those would be our last conversations, I would have memorized every word, every smile, every look. Family lunch was more special than usual. My mother had prepared all the traditional dishes, and the table was filled not only with food but with love and shared stories. The little ones played in the yard with their cousins, while we adults talked about life, about the changes in the city, about the blessings that God had given us. The goodbyes were long, as they always were in our family. Tight hugs, promises to come back soon, recommendations to be careful on the road. My mother, in her worried way, insisted that we stay until the next day, but I had commitments at the farm that couldn't wait. If only I had listened to her motherly advice. We started the journey back when the sun was already starting to set. The children, exhausted from playing, soon fell asleep in the back seat. Martha and I talked quietly so as not to wake them, making plans for the future, dreaming of the years to come together. The radio played old songs, the kind that make us feel at peace with the world. It was a perfect night for traveling, with the full moon illuminating the road and a gentle breeze coming through the car windows. The night wore on as we walked along the road that would take us back home. Fatigue was beginning to weigh on my eyes, but I resisted, thinking that it would be a short while before we arrived. Martha had fallen asleep next to me, Her head gently rested against the window pane. The silence inside the car was broken only by the soft sound of the engine and the calm breathing of my family. That's when it happened. Even today, I try to reconstruct those fateful seconds in my mind. I remember fighting the weight of my eyelids, trying to stay focused on the road ahead. But at some point, for just a few moments, I lost the battle with sleep. It was seconds, maybe less than that, but enough to change the course of our lives forever. The first sound I registered was that of tires leaving the asphalt, followed by Martha's frightened scream. The car began to roll over, and the world spun at a terrifying speed. The sound was deafening, metal twisting, glass shattering, screams mixed with the noise of the impact. Each moment seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Each turn of the vehicle brought a new wave of terror and despair. When the car finally stopped, an unsettling silence took over the environment. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. My legs were trapped between the hardware. One of my arms hung at an impossible angle, and every breath was a battle against the pain that took over every inch of my being. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, and through blurred vision, I desperately tried to locate my family. It was then that I heard Caleb's soft cry coming from the back seat. That sound was like a knife piercing my heart. My son needed me, and I was there, helpless, unable to move to help him. I tried calling for him, for Martha, for Noah, but my voice was nothing more than a hoarse whisper. Desperation grew in my chest as consciousness began to slip away from me. The air was thick with the smell of gasoline and burning rubber. Through the shattered windshield, I could see the stars above, shining oblivious to our tragedy. The pain was unbearable, but even more painful was the uncertainty about the status of my family. I tried once again to move, to scream, to do anything, but my body refused to obey. The extremities began to go numb, and a darkness began to approach the edges of my consciousness. It was in this moment of absolute despair that something began to change. The pain, which until then had been overwhelming, began to gradually subside, like a receding tide. A different sensation began to wash over me, something I had never experienced before. It was as if my being was freeing itself from the physical ties that tied me to that broken body inside the car. It was then that everything started to change. The physical pain that was consuming me began to dissipate, giving way to a feeling I had never experienced before. It was as if every cell in my body was being filled with a soft, welcoming light. Little by little, I realized that I was moving away from the scene of the accident, as if I were floating above it all. From an elevated vantage point, I could clearly see our wrecked car on the side of the road. I saw my own body trapped between the hardware, motionless and bloody. It was a surreal sight, like I was watching a movie scene, except I knew it was real, terribly real. I could see the lights of cars starting to stop, people running towards us, distant voices shouting for help. The feeling was indescribable. There was no more pain, no fear, no anxiety. It was as if all earthly concerns had been removed from me. I felt light, free, connected to something much bigger than I could understand. It was at that moment that I realized I was not alone in this experience. A familiar presence began to manifest itself beside me. It was Martha, but not as I knew her in her physical form. She was pure light, radiant and loving, emanating a peace that transcended any human understanding. There were no words being exchanged between us, but communication was happening on a much deeper level. I could feel his love, his concern, his understanding of everything that was happening. Through this silent connection, Martha showed me something that would forever change my understanding of life and death. I saw that we were not just physical bodies, but beings of light connected by bonds that transcended the material plane. I saw that the love we shared was not limited by physical existence, but was eternal, infinite, part of something much greater. But in the midst of this transcendental experience, something pulled me back. It was Caleb's crying, still trapped in the car. Martha, in her luminous way, made me understand without words that our son needed me. It was a choice I needed to make: remain in that state of absolute peace or return to a broken body and a life that would be completely different from the one I knew. Martha's motherly love shone with an intensity that made me understand that even though she could no longer be physically present, her love would continue to guide us. She showed me, through images and sensations, that Caleb would need me to grow, to understand love and life, to carry on our family legacy. The decision was difficult, but necessary. I chose to return, even though I knew the path would be arduous. Martha enveloped me in her light one last time, conveying strength and love, before I began to feel again the weight of my physical body and the pain that I had momentarily forgotten. Returning to consciousness was like diving into icy waters. The pain returned with overwhelming intensity, brutally reminding me of the reality of my injured body. The sounds of the hospital began to filter through the haze of unconsciousness, the constant beeping of monitors, muffled voices of doctors and nurses, the soft hum of equipment keeping me alive. Opening my eyes was a monumental effort. The hospital's fluorescent light felt harsh and unnatural compared to the softness of the light he had experienced. Little by little, I began to make out the faces around me. A nurse adjusting something in my IV, a young doctor consulting a clipboard, concerned expressions studying me with professional attention. But there was something more there, something that others didn't seem to notice. He could feel Martha's presence, no longer as the bright light he had encountered, but as a soft, comforting energy. It was as if she was there, invisible to the eyes of others, watching over my recovery. Sometimes I felt his gentle touch on my forehead, a quiet comfort in the midst of the pain and confusion. The days dragged by in a blur of medical procedures, pain medications, and specialist visits. My body was severely bruised, crushed legs, a nearly lost arm, broken ribs. Each breath was a painful reminder of the accident, but also a testament that I had chosen to return, that I still had a mission to fulfill. The most extraordinary thing was how I could feel the emotions of the people around me. It was as if the experience had opened a new channel of perception within me. I could feel the sincere dedication of the night nurse, who hummed softly as she checked my vitals. I noticed the hidden fear in the young doctor, worried about making the right decisions for my recovery. It was a deep connection with the human side of those who cared for me. One night, as the pain kept me awake, I witnessed something that the medical team would later confirm. The nurse on duty was adjusting my medications when she suddenly stopped, as if she had been touched by something invisible. She later told me that she had felt a presence in the room, as if someone was there, silently thanking her for her care. I knew it was Martha, still finding ways to express her love and gratitude. Physical recovery was just part of the journey. My mind was constantly processing what I had experienced, trying to reconcile everyday reality with the profound spiritual experience I had experienced. The nights were especially challenging, when the silence of the hospital allowed me to reflect on everything that had changed, on the people I had lost, on the son who still needed me. During my recovery in the hospital, I experienced something that would forever change my understanding of good and evil. On a particularly difficult night, when the pain felt more intense than usual, I felt myself being pulled to a completely different place than the welcoming light I had encountered before. It was as if he was descending into an endless abyss, where a dense, suffocating darkness reigned. The air there was heavy, filled with a sense of anguish and despair that permeated every fiber of my being. It was not a physical place as we know it, but a state of existence where suffering was palpable. I saw figures I recognized, familiar faces from our religious community, people I had always considered exemplars of faith and virtue, religious leaders, pastors, people who spent their lives preaching about heaven and hell, but there they were, trapped in their own torments, each carrying the weight of their own choices and judgments. It was not a divine punishment as we have always been taught. It was the natural result of his own actions and thoughts. I saw how their words of condemnation, their harsh judgments, and their lack of compassion had created spiritual prisons from which they could not escape. The most impressive thing was that no one kept them there. There were no demons or evil figures torturing them. They were prisoners of their own limited convictions, of their prejudices, of their inability to understand and accept the universal love that I had experienced in the light. Their empty prayers and meaningless rituals echoed in the void as they remained blind to the true nature of the divine. This experience showed me that hell was not a place of punishment created by a vengeful God, but a state of consciousness created by our own limitations and fears. I saw how our actions and thoughts create our spiritual reality, and how the true path to the light lies not in dogma or rituals, but in purity of heart and the ability to love unconditionally. In contrast to the darkness of the abyss, I was transported to a realm of pure light and absolute harmony. It was there that I found Noah, my youngest son, no longer as the child I knew, but as a being of radiant light and at peace. His presence was so real, so tangible, that it transcended any earthly explanation. The environment was filled with an energy of unconditional love that seemed to emanate from all directions. There were no words being exchanged, but communication was happening on a much deeper and more meaningful level. Noah showed me that there was no need for guilt or remorse. It was all part of a bigger plan that our human minds couldn't fully comprehend. It was as if every moment of pain and loss had a greater purpose, a reason for being that we could only understand when we saw the whole picture. Noah radiated an understanding and acceptance that made me feel at home, truly at home, for the first time since the accident. But even in this state of absolute bliss, I could feel Caleb. His presence in the physical world was like a golden thread pulling me back. Noah, in his infinite wisdom, made me understand that it was not my time to stay yet. Caleb needed guidance, love, someone to help him understand the deeper meaning of life and death. The farewell was painful, but unlike any pain I had ever felt. It was a pain mixed with understanding, acceptance, and unconditional love. Noah enveloped me in his light one last time, conveying strength and courage for the journey that still lay ahead. It was a difficult but necessary choice, returning to the physical world to fulfill my mission with Caleb. The definitive return to my body was gradual, as if I was relearning to inhabit a space that no longer completely belonged to me. The doctors were amazed at my recovery, even though the road ahead was long and challenging. My right leg needed to be amputated, and my left arm would never have the same mobility again. But these physical limitations seemed small compared to the inner transformation he had experienced. Every day of physical therapy, every moment of pain and frustration was illuminated by a deeper understanding of life's purpose. Caleb's constant presence, his unconditional love, and his strength in dealing with our losses gave me the strength to carry on. The months of recovery were a school of patience and perseverance. I learned to see beauty in small achievements. The first step with the prosthetic, being able to hold a cup without spilling it, being able to hug Caleb again. Every progress was celebrated not only by us, but I felt that Martha and Noah also shared in these victories. The medical team noticed something different about me, a serenity that seemed incongruous with the gravity of my situation. It wasn't just resignation, but a deep acceptance and understanding that each challenge had its purpose. I shared my experience with some of them, and although not everyone understood, they respected the transformation they saw in me. Dreams during this period were intense and vivid. Sometimes I received visits from Martha and Noah, not as frightening apparitions, but as loving presences that guided and comforted me. These nighttime experiences helped me stay connected to what I had experienced, reminding me that reality was much broader than what our eyes could see. The return home was a moment of deep emotions. The farm, which once felt so familiar, now held bittersweet memories of our former life, but it also offered the opportunity for a new beginning. With the help of neighbors and friends, we adapted the house to my new physical needs, and little by little, Caleb and I found a new rhythm of life. I developed a different sensitivity towards nature. Every sunrise brought with it a renewed promise, every sunset a reminder of the ephemeral beauty of life. Work on the farm continued, albeit in a different form. Caleb took on many of the responsibilities I could no longer handle, showing maturity beyond his years. Our father-son relationship has deepened in ways I never imagined possible. We talked openly about Martha and Noah, sharing memories and tears, but also laughter and hope. I taught him that our loved ones are never truly far away, that love transcends the barriers between worlds. The local religious community had difficulty understanding my new spiritual perspectives. I stopped attending church regularly, not because I rejected the faith, but because I had found a deeper, more direct connection with the divine. Some criticized me, others supported me, but I learned not to care about external judgments. I dedicated myself to helping others who had experienced similar losses. My experience became a source of comfort for those struggling to make sense of their own tragedies. It didn't offer ready-made answers or religious dogma, but it shared the understanding that love and connection with our loved ones endures beyond death. Today, years after that fateful Easter night, I see how every aspect of my experience shaped who I became. The farm remains our home, a place where Caleb is growing into a man I'm proud to call my son. Martha and Noah's presences are constant in our lives, not as ghosts of the past, but as lights that guide us to the future. I learned that true spirituality is not in rituals or doctrines, but in the ability to love unconditionally and see beyond appearances. The near-death experience taught me that we are all part of something much larger, connected by bonds that transcend our earthly understanding. Each morning, as I watch the sunrise over our land, I feel profound gratitude for the second chance I have been given. It's not a perfect life. There are days of pain, of longing, of challenges, but there is also a deeper understanding of the purpose of it all, a peace that comes from knowing that nothing ever really ends. Caleb is following his own path, carrying with him the values and love that Martha and I have always tried to convey. He has his own dreams and plans for the farm, and it makes me happy to see how he manages to balance respect for the past with a vision for the future. Our story is not just about loss and overcoming, it is a testament to the transformative power of love, a love that transcends death, that heals, that gives meaning to life even in the most difficult moments. It's a reminder that in the end, it's not our possessions or achievements that matter, but the connections we create and the love we share. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.